But I was just going to quickly say that in the Czech Republic 2 years ago, because nobody played in 2020, I was up against a kid who had gained 150 points in a month. He's now like 2450, and I think he was the highest rated like 11-year-old in the world. I'm talking about Rahil Mulik. I don't know if we'll be hearing about him in the next year or two, but that was not a very fun game. That whole game, I thought I was winning, and then I lost. And when I got back to the room, it turned out he was winning the whole time, and he knew better than me.
5 points. Why is such a big advantage to white if white is only a pawn up?
In this pawn ending? Yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, but it's a majority that's pretty easy to convert in the sense that white is so much further advanced than what black can do over here. In fact, as ugly as these pawns are, they're actually fine from a defensive standpoint because there's really no way to make progress without offering some sort of trade, which is just easy to push back. We've got a rook ending. This should also be easy. 2 pawns are better than 1. So really the ZAF D game and the AD 0406 games are the 2 where Vishy is going to really try to prove his worth as a world champion. And
I start teaching my dad. My father really likes the fact that I play chess because he, considers it as a very noble sport. So this child also, when I used to play any other video game, I think he would scold me. But when he would see I'm playing chess, he would be very happy. So now, when I'd gone back last year to meet him, he wanted to learn chess. So I took him through these chess.com lessons and everything. So he started playing, and and now he's not very good at it, but he's learning these end games and how to promote your pawns and all of this stuff. Little bit of the opening. There's a learn section in chess.com. That's where he started learning. He forgets things, but I hope someday. This is my dream. I hope someday my father beats me in chess. That's my dream.
Most people, it's the opposite. They start out learning chess and eventually hope to beat their dad, and then maybe go from there. So that's awesome, and it's funny because it does show that is one of the best things about chess, right? It sounds cliche, but it literally is. It's age blind, gender blind, race blind, religion blind. I mean, chess is its own language and culture, and you literally have small kids being better than 75-year-old adults, right? And you can learn it at any age and keep playing it. A mandala with $150. You just got us over $35,000. Again, we're there. We're rocking it. We've blown past expectations. You can see we have crushed the $15,000 goal. If Vishy finds a way to win this thing, look at Rakesh, dude. Rakesh just gave me $1,000. Now Vishy's idea is he's going to come back and corral this pawn, right? So like if E3 discovered check, he plays here. And if you can win this pawn without any problems being caused here, now this pawn becomes a decoy where it can actually make this king run away, and maybe white can use that as an opportunity to win on this side of the board, either with the king or the knight. So, kind of typical outside pass pawn tricks. Very often it's not the fact that that pawn becomes a queen, but that pawn becomes the decoy that wins you the game on the other side of the board in some fashion, right? Where you can't both hold a blockade and stop the pawn. So
I just had a doubt. In that game. Why did he not go ahead with the king, like king f6 here, like in the previous move when he played e4? Here, why didn't he keep pushing the pawn like g6? Because that pawn on e file cannot promote anyway because the knight is guarding the e2 square. So why didn't he just keep going ahead with the pawn?
I think the idea is after e3, and if you continue to go, the black bishop can stop the pawn from advancing. And now here's the problem. It's hard for the knight to make progress without the e-pawn. We always say that the knights are the worst pieces at stopping past pawns because they can't both attack a piece and defend the progressing square. It sounds really simple, but it's actually really important to like imprint in your brain because almost every other piece can do it. Like a rook can attack a pawn and defend the square it's advancing to from both behind and in front. A king can attack a pawn and defend the square that it's advancing to. The problem with a knight is you have no ability to both attack and prevent the progressing square. It makes them basically, I always use the term a donkey when it comes to defending past pawns. So Vishy's move is actually kind of smart. He sort of enticed this pawn forward. And now before this guy gets too far, he just backs up and he's going to corral the pawn and then go back to the idea of winning. Does that make sense?
Now it makes sense. And this concept is very, very new. I've never heard of this, so I'll remember it throughout now. Okay, can you go for something like a knight e5 with the idea of f3?
Yeah, I think that is actually what's going to be needed because one of the ways you try to calculate, to win a position like this for advice for those here for the chess instruction is before you just start considering next move or look for tricks or, you calculate variations, you have to take your foot off the gas and just pause for a second and consider where you're going. And often what happens in time pressure is people fail to do that. The problem I'm struggling here is even without time pressure, I'm struggling to visualize the position where white even is winning. Because like I play imaginary chess. If I put my knight here and it's black to move, like there's still plenty of ways for them to, like I could say if the king moves, I get in. And if the bishop moves, I win the pawn. But if my knight's there, the bishop will always have this diagonal. If my knight's here, the bishop has this diagonal. And even if I could say pass there, the king can actually move because in that position, I'm not threatening to bring my king in because the knight would be hanging. Often the way you win these endgames is you visualize the goal and you say like, all right, even if it's not forced, at least I can imagine a position where if my opponent blundered, there is a win. All I have to do is trick him into not realizing that there's a threat. There's this long-term threat of if my king gets here and my knight gets here, I win. The problem here is I can't even imagine a position that's winning for white. You get what I'm saying? Like there's no way to put black in zugzwang here. The only way you could mess up a position like this is you don't want to push the pawn so aggressively that your king has nowhere to hide from checks. Like it'd be very hard to mess up, but there are weird positions where, okay, I'll just give an example. Like if something happened where you checked and you actually like, you had to run away so far that you left the pawns behind. Now there's moves where the pawns get attacked, for example, and you're actually drawing. So it's a shocking point, but it could, worse things have happened where you basically mess up by bringing your king the wrong direction and you leave the pawns to no defense. So often the best way to do it is kind of how Vishy has it here, which is make sure your king always has an umbrella, right? Something to protect from the rain of checks and advance the pawns together, but always keeping your king sort of shielded potentially. The separation is really key in that regard. Again, at least you have remember I talked about just setting these goal positions and then considering the moves of how you get there. There's multiple goal positions here that you can kind of build your house on. You build a ladder, and now already we see like we're going to get this check. King has to move. The king's going to come in, and we're going to see the plan I talked about. The knight will relocate itself to force the king away, either to d7 or d5. It'll find a square. The king will get in closer. And then eventually, then the real key is to get the knight to c7, because from c7, you can check and hit the pawn no matter where the bishop is, even if it's guarding it, white will be winning. So white should be able to convert this endgame.
This arrow thing on chess.com, I think is really spoiling my chess, because on chess.com when I play, I can draw arrows and calculate and all. And then when I go on the board, I'm like, where are the arrows, man? Can I draw the arrows on the board, please? And then I can't calculate deep.
You just have to take some hallucinogenics like Beth Harmon. That's all. And then you can do it. If you're on the little green pill, as Beth would tell you, you can do anything. By the way, that was not an endorsement for any of Beth Harmon's behavior, both on and off the chessboard in the movie The Queen's Gambit. This public service announcement brought to you by chess.com. That was not an endorsement of doing that. I was kidding. Let's bring up the scoreboard one more time now that it's fully updated. I saw it updated in real time. We've got it. 22 wins and 3 draws for the champ. Humpy Canero follows with 17-3. And again, Harika, same score. Ni hao, if you missed it, obviously we were here for much more than the chess today, but that was a super instructive and crazy swindle. His opponent, really snatching stalemate from the jaws of defeat, gets a ton of credit. And Pragdananda is the OP champion of the day, our only simul giver to go perfect 20-0.
Please, whatever.